Hello, everyone. It is Monday evening, June the 29th, 2015, and we are doing a transition maintenance call with Jim, who so graciously offered us to be able to listen in on a call. So we're going to do this live, and hopefully it helps us understand as health coaches how to walk someone through that transition and maintenance process. So Jim and I met at one of our trainings here locally in Atlanta. And he had some questions around some things that I shared in our 3 and 3, and is looking at transitioning from the 5 and 1 into the 3 and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and just let him share a little bit of what he's already shared with me to catch everyone up. So Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you've been on 5 and 1 in a nutshell, and then where you want to go, what you want to create from here.
Okay. I'm actually, I started on the 5 and 1 program on April 23rd. And since that time, I've lost close to 38 pounds. I actually was on my own diet back in January and February, and lost 12 pounds. So basically, since January, I'm down around 50 pounds. I'm looking at about 4 more pounds on my program before I'll actually get into what I consider the maintenance program. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually, a little statistics about myself. I'm 5'10". I weigh right now 184 pounds. I'm 63 years old, and this has been just a fabulous program. So awesome. The thing that makes the program so fabulous is the fact that it's so easy to understand. All I have to worry about on a day-to-day basis is what my one lean meal is. Mm-hmm. Everything else comes so easy to me, which gives me a little hesitation going to the adding the other calories, whether I'm going to add those right or whether I'm going to add them wrong.
Sure.
Like most people that are into this program, I've been very, very successful all my life of losing weight, but I end up always getting it back. So this time I don't get it back.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you reaching out, because as health coaches, that is the role, right? The 5 and 1 is a blip on the radar. It's the rest of our life. Exactly. We want to maintain the weight that we've lost, the hard work that we've put in, and the healthy mind pieces we've shifted. What goes on up here, not only in what we're eating, but how we think about what we're doing. So a couple questions for you, Jim. Currently, what are you doing for exercise? Have you been able to maintain a habit of health around exercise?
Yes. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been back into my exercise program. I walk probably 3 to 5 miles 5 days a week. Okay. I'm also doing some light weightlifting now. I'll probably get a little more into that here in the next week, since I got a clearance from my doctor today. So, but I'll probably increase a little bit more on the walking also. So, but that's basically what I've been doing since I got on the program back in April.
Okay. And about how long does it take you to walk 3 to 5 miles? How long are you spending doing cardio the 5 days a week?
3 to 5 miles. Before I basically, I was probably doing 15 to 17 minute miles. So that's basically what I do when I go out and walk.
Okay. So you're spending about 90 to 120 minutes exercising daily, you think?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay. All right, great. And so you've been consistent on the 5 and 1, staying on the program. Have you had any times where you felt like maybe on a day that you've weightlifted or done 7 miles that you felt like you were hungry?
There's been a few times that's happened, and what I do is I either supplement it by drinking more water, or actually take another one of the lean bars or something like that, and eat that when I'm hungry. So I really don't do much off the program. So
excellent. Excellent. So with the 5 and 1, we do suggest that clients exercise 45 minutes a day. So you've been exercising a little bit more than what's recommended, which is fine. We do want to really encourage the habit of health of exercise, but we want to make sure it's in the right order. So we talk about a systematic approach, making sure that we're doing 80% nutrition, 20% exercise. And when we have someone like you, Jim, who's really excited about exercise, we definitely don't want to put any dampers on that. So we applaud your efforts, and definitely, hopefully by the end of this call, you will understand how to give your body the fuel that it needs. And then my understanding is you want to take maybe some more fat down to decrease your body fat and then increase your muscle. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So the weight where Jim is probably about accurate for his height. But as we age, we lose muscle. So it's important that we build muscle. Now, he'd like to gain about 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. And that's no small job, I will say. Gaining 10 to 15 pounds of muscle is quite a lot. However, when we start to feed muscle appropriately, and as I take Jim through this transition process, you guys will see where it's important, and the idea that on the 5-in-1, where it does sustain muscle mass, it doesn't do anything to activate it or grow it. Okay? So, all right, Jim, I appreciate all the information. A couple things I do want to note is that in January, in your notes, you kind of alluded to the fact that you did do your own program for a few months, that you lost about 12 pounds, and then on the 5-in-1, you've lost 38. Yeah. One of the great things about Take Shape for Life is that when we do the 5-in-1 and we follow the protocol, we actually are able to sustain muscle mass, in which helps our body to not degrade that for fuel, or to have the body, it's called catabolizing the muscle in order to use it for fuel. And other diets, it actually happens where people are losing weight, but they get really flabby because the body wants to use the most readily available source of muscle, and it breaks down the muscle to use for energy. And what's so great about Take Shape for Life is when we use the Medifast 5-in-1, that doesn't happen. Now, one of the reasons I asked if you were hungry was because if you exercise outside of the 45 minutes, we do see that people start to break down muscle because they're using so much energy towards exercise. It's about, you can guesstimate on any given person, probably for every maybe mile that you do, you burn about 100 calories.
Right.
Okay, so that's a kind of a good average guesstimate. So we don't need to go to the exact number here. But so on any given day that you're doing 5 to 7 miles, you're looking at 500 to 700 calories burned.
Right.
Okay. So that's quite a lot for 5-in-1. So what I think is going to happen is, as we start feeding your body some more food, this transition process is going to get much easier, which you kind of started doing just intuitively, just because you have wanted to increase the exercise and now the strength training. Right. So first step, when someone wants to begin that transition process and they have the habit of health, of exercise, there's two ways that we can transition. The first way is if somebody is at their goal weight and they're not quite at exercising. I've shared in some of our trainings that when you exercise 3 times a week, that's for heart health. We need to see someone at least exercising 3 times a week in order to transition. It's imperative. 4 times a week is when we see somebody maintaining their weight. Okay? 5 times a week is where we see change. Yep. So if someone's not willing to do 5 times a week, they're really not going to, they might feel, I can't say that's not beneficial. They're going to feel better, but they will start seeing changes at 5 and 6 times a week is when we head towards performance, or even for you, Jim, because you want to grow some new muscle, 6 times a week is about where we're going to need anywhere from 5 to 6 times between the cardio and the weight training. Okay. So that's the first step. Now, if someone is at 3 times a week, Take Shape for Life has a great transition plan that we can follow right out of the transition and maintenance guide. And it takes us to adding the extra vegetable the first week, and then adding the fruit, and each week. And basically what we're doing is we're allowing the body to gradually increase calories. I find this works much better with women. I will make that disclaimer than with men, because men have a higher metabolic rate. As soon as we add the fruit, we're going to take their body out of fat burn if they're eating anything besides strawberries. Strawberries are the lowest carbohydrate fruit. So pretty much the other vegetables are going to take someone out of fat burn. And as we all know, if we're out of fat burn and our calories are low and our metabolic rate is high, our body is going to burn muscle. Okay?
Okay.
If let's say Cindy here. Cindy's a little lady, and if Cindy was in fat burn and then added fruit, she's pretty much going to be close to her metabolic rate. So it's not going to be that big of a deal for her to come out of fat burn because she's going to be near the calories she needs. Same with Susan. You know, it's not as big of a deal. But when we're talking about you, Jim, I did your resting metabolic rate, and you're anywhere between 1,600 and 1,700 calories.
Yes, I am.
So if you're eating 800 and then you come out of fat burn because you have fruit, now you're at maybe 900 calories and you're burning 500 to 700 calories in exercise. It's just like your body's like, what is going on here? Okay, it's just going to be pretty tough. So my recommendation for you, because of where you are, is we're going to transition you a little bit faster because your exercise is going to compensate for the extra calories. And I believe you're probably already a little out of balance.
Probably so.
Because you've increased your exercise so much, which is great, but the food part hasn't caught up with it yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the fuel you need and keep your exercise the same, and then we're going to kind of watch how your body feels and what happens, okay? So you had asked me about using the Optimal Health Bars as a part of this process. Because your body's in such a deficit at the moment, instead of gradually increasing your calories, we're gonna keep you in fat burn because we do still have some fat to lose.
Okay.
And we're gonna see how keeping you in fat burn with like on a 4-2-2, you're gonna be able to do 4 MetaFast meals, 2 lean and greens, and 2 snacks. Okay, and that will still keep you in a fat burning state because of your exercise. Okay. The other times we offer a 4-2-2, most of you will know, is from people who are diabetic, but that's because it helps them balance their blood sugar, but they're not typically going to be in fat burn. Jim, you use MyFitnessPal, so you'll be able to watch. I want to make sure that your carbohydrates stay under 100.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fat burning is 80 to 100 grams of carbs. And this is, remember I told you the first part of our conversation is going to be what we all can do. And then in the second part of our conversation will be what fitness professionals can do. Okay. So up to this point, we've talked about what we can advise as health coaches, which fat burning is 80 to 100 grams of carbohydrates. Now, since we're still eating, suggesting that Jim still eat 4 MetaFast meals, he doesn't need to take a multivitamin because with 4, you can still get enough vitamins and minerals. 5 is better, but 4 and 2 and 2 will provide his body the nutrients he needs. As soon as we go to a 3 and 3 plan, especially if we use the Optimal Health Bars, a multivitamin is required because then the body's not getting the nutrients it needs. Because you're not getting, even if you have 3 MetaFast meals, not the Optimal Health Bars, it's just not quite enough of the RDA, the recommended daily allowance. Okay? So Jim, what we've discussed at this point, and I'd like you to do this for a week and check back in with me. So for the next week, we're going to change your plan to a 4-2-2. That's 4 MetaFast meals, 2 full lean and greens. That's including the healthy fats. So if you choose tilapia, I want to make sure that you use 2 healthy fats with your tilapia. Okay, keep an eye out on the chart to make sure that you're getting, and I always tell people, if you want great results, measure and be exact. And if you're just wanting mediocre results, then you can guesstimate, but great results come when we measure. Okay? And with as detailed as your email was to me, I'm assuming you are measuring. Okay? So
I'm the engineering type.
So 4-2-2, the two things come from 2 snacks.
Okay.
And that's just to help keep your body satiated, especially because of the exercise you're doing.
Okay. And those snacks to be MetaFast snacks?
Yes, MetaFast snacks. So the snack list around almonds, sugar-free Jell-O, the celery sticks, the MetaFast snacks like the popcorn and chips, those kinds of things.
Okay. All right.
Okay, but still keep an eye on those carbohydrates because they can vary depending on what part of the green list you're choosing from, whether it's from the low, the moderate, or the high. So one of the things that Jim and I are going to talk about when we talk next week, how things are going, how his carbohydrates look. I'm assuming I'm going to get an email in the next day or two with some questions from Jim, which is just fine. That's one of the ways that we can, as we're talking with our clients, we want to be able to make modifications. We're a sounding board for our clients so that they're not making up stuff as they go. Okay? Sometimes we're not the best person to ask. I don't know about you, but when I am needing to make a change to my plan, I am not the best person to ask. I need to ask outside of myself and get someone else's outside opinion of what's going on.
Okay.
We're not a great coach for ourselves. So making changes should always happen when you talk to someone else, preferably another coach or a professional. But hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you think about this? It's just great. 2 heads are better than 1. Okay. So Jim's going to change his plan to a 4-2-2, and he's going to keep his exercise as is. We're going to watch what happens with his weight, with his energy. And I'm assuming we're going to start to see some of his skin firming up. And what that is the muscles are starting to get filled back up with glycogen. Okay, when someone starts getting kind of, and you can see it when someone gets sick, where their body kind of gets depleted, and then they start eating again, and they just look fuller and brighter, and that's the body just starting to accept nutrients again and getting water back in, and it's just a sign that the body is in good working order. Okay. When we see a lot of flabbiness or the body, when you just don't feel quite right, and you can usually tell on your forearm, that's usually a good place to look and pat it, and you can pinch there and kind of see how your body is responding to what you're doing. And of course you can see it in your face as well. So Jim, that's my suggestion for this immediate change. Okay. And then we will be able to transition and continue the process as we go. Okay. So that's going to be part 1. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and allow those of you who have joined us to ask any questions up to this point that you have. So go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have a question.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, Debbie?
So you were saying this is, there's part that that the health coaches could take on as their job, mm-hmm. and then part that we would have to defer to a professional.
Right.
Everything that you just did with him, that's something that we can do?
Absolutely.
Okay, so at some point I'll be good enough to be able to tell people, oh, try 4-2-2 because I know that works.
Yeah. Okay. And it really comes with working with a lot of people and understanding what all of the meal plans provide. Okay. So a 5-in-1, we offer 5-in-1 and an optional snack, right? Mm-hmm. Some people's bodies really respond well to the optional snack. Other people's bodies, they can't do the optional snack. They lose too slow. So a lot of it is just figuring out what works best for someone's body and being able to make suggestions and having the accountability. And the more a client reaches out and tells you what's going on, the more we can help. So if you have a client that says, you know what, every day at 3 o'clock, I'm just still so tired. Well, the more you hear that, you're probably going to call nutrition support, right? And you're going to say, hey, I keep having these clients who are tired at 3 o'clock. And then they're going to give you a recommendation. And now the next client that calls you and they have a problem at 3 o'clock, you're going to know what to say. So that's the process of learning as health coaches. So it doesn't happen overnight. But the fact that you are all on this call is because you want to learn and you want to be proficient at coaching. And it's not just about helping someone figure out how to place an order, but it is about the process. Like Jim said, he worked so hard to get this off. He wants to make sure that he does it the right way as he starts adding whole foods back into his life. Okay, so it's a great question. Anyone else have questions around this first part? Yeah, Susan?
So I was curious about the 4-2-2 and using the MetaFast snacks. And what that will do for him. It'll give him more calories, but how will that, with some extra protein, be good too? Tell me about that.
Okay, so because Jim is a little bit different, the fact that he wants to walk 5 to 7 miles a day, that's not normal. So you're not usually going to see that. Typically, I will say, so Jim, let's just pretend you wanted to walk 3 miles a day, okay? I would tell Jim to do a 4 and 2.
Okay.
I did the 4, 2, and 2 to give him some extra carb and protein balance to give his body a little bit extra. I'm pretty sure it's going to take him right up to that 100 grams of carbs mark without going over. It's kind of that game. How close can you get without going over? Okay? Because what that's going to do is it's going to give his body some more energy for those 5 to 7 miles a day that he's walking. Because in no way do I want his body to start tapping into muscle to get that done. So I want to take him all the way as close up to that mark, the most his body will give me before it changes. Because remember, we have 2 fuel sources. We can burn glycogen or we can burn fat. And because Jim still wants to lose some fat, in the next phase of this conversation, we're going to talk about what are some things he can do to start building some muscle. But as we've talked about in the past, the first step is fat loss, and it's really hard to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. That's quite an art. So in this situation, because of what's already going on, I'm going to recommend we get some more fat down first, and then we're going to fully transition to put on muscle.
Gotcha.
Okay? Anyone else have a question about that?
Would extra protein work too, or not really?
Not really, because it doesn't balance. We're looking for blood sugar stabilization, and we're also looking at adding the carbohydrates in order to allow the body to have that extra in order to come as close. The carbohydrates provide energy, and he's in fat burn when he's out walking, but his body's still going to be using carbohydrates, even though we're not burning glycogen as a fuel source. So if you don't have some carbs, this is why people who eat really super low carb are crazy. They act crazy. They kind of brain fog and stuff like that because their body's just not getting enough. And when we're doing a lot of cardiovascular activity, especially, it does deplete a lot of that. So adding protein would be, if Jim said, I want to lift weights 5 to 7 days a week, he could just eat protein. He wouldn't need to add the carbohydrates. But because he's choosing the cardiovascular route, which is fine, but when Jim wants to put on some muscle, we're going to cut back on cardio and increase strength training. So let's just, since we have a couple minutes left, in phase 2, so this next part, like I mentioned, is not something that you would need to know. But what you could do with your clients, because of what we're talking about now and you're learning, you could say something to the effect of, we have a personal trainer on our team, and what she recommends is, if you have any other questions, you should give her a call. Okay? So that you can say, but because it's out of your scope of practice, be careful to not prescribe how someone should work out or what things they should be doing, because that's not our role as a health coach. So in part 2 of this, Jim wants to increase his muscle and decrease fat. And where there is technically a way that you can do that simultaneously, it is very difficult. And so what I recommend for Jim, because of where he's currently at in his exercise regimen, Jim, I want you to continue doing your exercise the way you are. We're going to change up the meals. And then in the next week, we're going to see how that transpired, what that did to the body. And then what we're going to begin to do is back off on the cardiovascular and increase the strength. So right now we're heavy on cardio because of your cardiac stuff that you had going on. I'm sure it feels really great. The heart is a muscle too, so we definitely need to work that. But one of the things that cardio does is shrink muscle mass. So when we're wanting to grow muscle, we need to decrease some cardio and increase resistance training in order to build mass. All right? And there's some supplements that I recommend in order to help with that as far as recovery, some branched chain amino acids that help with the way that the protein is synthesized in the body, and which helps with muscle growth as well. But like I said, so right now we're doing basic resistance in your 5 to 7 miles a day. And then in the next week or so, we're going to begin. And it's not like I'm going to say, okay, Jim, no more cardio. You're going to lift 5 to 7 days. There's things in moderation. We're going to gradually take that process from, okay, this week I want you to add another strength training instead of your 5 to 7 miles, or do a mile for warm up. And then I want you to lift and then maybe a mile cool down. See, so we're still going to add it in, but it's just going to look a little bit different. And then we've got to watch and see how your body responds to that. There is no cookie cutter approach when it comes to exercise. It really is dependent on how the body responds, and then matching the food to the effort of what's going on in order to create the result that we're looking for. We're looking for the response. So oftentimes it's not necessarily what goes on, but as far as what you're doing, but the response that you're getting. So if you're consistently doing something and not getting a good response, continuing doing that is probably not the best choice, right? That's often called the definition of insanity. So we need to make adjustments when we want to see a different result. And that can go for anything, our body, our business, our marriage, our friendships. So that's what I would recommend around what to do and why it's so important to have the help of a health coach. Our job, our role is really important as we walk alongside, and then we can make recommendations. Hey, I hear you and I want to help you, but this next step is actually going to be better for so-and-so to advise you on. Or let's get on a call with the behavioral specialist at Nutrition Support, or let's get on the phone with the dietitian. This is a little out of my scope of practice. So we need to be willing to use our bio network, and that includes our team. So does anybody have any questions about that? Yeah, Cindy? I think you can unmute yourself. There you go. Or I can. There you go.
This is just a general question about, and this is not related just to Jim, about transition. I mean, I've heard, I know what's in the book. I know what's the recommended, adding the fruit, the vegetable, the fruit, whatever. Do you ever recommend like going from a 5 and 1 to a 4 and 2, then a 3 and 3? And yeah. When would you recommend that versus what's recommended?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And I mentioned that at the beginning. If I have someone that's already exercising and has that habit of health, I go from a 5 and 1 to a 4 and 2 to a 3 and 3. Okay. I make them quicker because they're exercising and they're burning calories. And as soon as I take them out of fat burn, their body's kind of making up for that differential around having the extra calories and putting them on quick. If I have someone who's sedentary, who hasn't worked out, who's just starting to move, who maybe is going for a walk for 10 minutes a day, I'm going to do the protocol with them. The fruit, or the vegetable, the fruit, the dairy. And also, the other times I'm going to do that is when I want to see, maybe I'm skeptical about how somebody's body processes dairy and grains. So I definitely want to add those in very specifically so that I can watch what happens with a person's body. Because we've not had it for so long, it's a perfect time to be able to see what happens and see how somebody's body responds.
Well, even when you're going from a 5 and 1 to a 4 and 2 and doing it that way, I wouldn't imagine that you would advise them to add all the rest of the food groups in all at one time because of the fact that they haven't been. So just kind of gradually adding it as they're eating the meals. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the 4 and 2 still stays in fat burn. When you go to a 3 and 3, remember 3 MetaFast meals and 3 lean and greens is not enough for someone to, as far as nutrients go, you're not getting enough nutrients. And so, and the fiber, all of those numbers kind of degrade when we go from a 4 and 2 to a 3 and 3. So I might go 4 and 2, and my next step might be a 3 and 3 plus fruit and a multivitamin.
And that's with the 3 MetaFast bars, not the Optimal Health bars.
Yeah.
It's a 3 and 3 and
optimal health bars, I might exchange those out. Like, okay, today instead of having one MetaFast, I'd add an optimal health. So I'd have 2 MetaFast, 1 optimal health, because those will add 100 calories at a time if you just sub it out.
Mm-hmm.
So be mindful. The company does recommend 100 calories gradually. Like, let's see how your body responds to extra 100 calories for a couple days. They say a week. I think sometimes that's a little long. If somebody's ready to transition, you know, if their body's handling it well, they're drinking their water, they're sleeping and they're exercising, and they're motivated, we can move them through. Jim, I don't want to not answer your question around wine, because I do how can I add in a glass of wine to my so when you're in fat burn, wine, Cindy's like, yes, I want to know about wine. My little secret is that for 1 ounce of wine is, we're talking about red wine, no white wine lovers, okay? Red wine, good red wine. So 1 ounce of wine is 1 carbohydrate. That's my secret. Okay? So if you drink a 4-ounce glass of wine, it's 4 carbs.
Okay.
So if you're looking at, now remember that alcohol can still cause your body to want to be snacky. So be mindful of that, but know that you can add it in as you're going through transition and maintenance. So we'll talk about some more things at another time. I really appreciate you all being on the call.